Early versions of the Wendigo legend came from the Algonquin peoples. This malevolent spirit is driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh and is able to possess people. Anyone under this entity's influence would suffer intense cannibalistic urges. Those previously driven to commit cannibalism, even if only as a desperate act of self-preservation, are especially vulnerable to the entity's influence, as is anyone harboring feelings of greed. Folklorists believe the myth originated as a way to prevent those facing extreme hunger in times of famine from resorting to cannibalism. The Wendigo mythology later morphed into a way to encourage moderation and cooperation within tribes. Anyone guilty of greed or jealousy, or anyone who had ever tasted human flesh, was considered tainted and easy prey for the beast. Earlier tales describe the Wendigo as a spirit in need of a host, but this beast eventually took on a putrid physical form of its own, a form described as strikingly tall and emaciated, reeking of rotting flesh, with sunken eyes and pale skin stretched impossibly tight over its bones. This shambling, skeletal being may seem fragile and haggard, but make no mistake, it is a hunter, immune to even the harshest climates. It possesses supernatural abilities that make it nearly impossible to escape. Despite its gaunt figure, it's unnaturally strong, fast, and large. It also has heightened senses and endurance. It also has the eerie ability to mimic human voices, and it uses this skill to lure its prey deep into the wilderness. Once far away from safety, it will either consume them or drive them mad before fully possessing them. However, if possession is the intention, the entity doesn't need to lure the victim away. It can begin the process at any time. The Wendigo infects its host slowly, tormenting them as it takes over the mind and body. It begins with strange odors that only the targeted victim can smell. They are then plagued with nightmares, their sanity melting away from their sleep-deprived minds. They'll experience an unbearable burning sensation throughout their legs and feet. It is usually at this point that those suffering with Wendigo fever end up stripping down and disappearing off into the forest. While this is usually the last anyone sees of those cursed by the Wendigo, the few who have returned from the woods have been said to come back utterly insane. According to the lore, the longer a Wendigo walks the earth, the stronger its powers become. The creature can eventually gain the ability to control the weather and to call upon darkness before sunset. It can summon predators and force them to strike on command. Its speed and strength also grow with age, as does its ability to heal itself. In December of 1879, a man was sentenced to death and executed by hanging in Fort Saskatchewan after using the Wendigo legend as his defense in a murder case. A Cree Indian named Swift Runner confessed to killing and eating his entire family, but he blamed his gruesome actions on a Wendigo. Runner explained to Canadian authorities that he became haunted by nightmares, and the spirit of a Wendigo called to him and convinced him to consume those around him. He claimed the spirit gradually took control of his mind until he was no longer himself. There was talk of Runner having committed cannibalism years prior when forced to eat a partner for survival out in the woods. Many believed it was the evil spirit of the Wendigo that wore him down and took over his body to commit these horrific acts. Another case related to Wendigo lore happened in 1907 when Jack Fiddler, a Cree chief, and his brother Joseph were detained by Canadian authorities for slaying 14 people. The Fiddler brothers claimed the people had either transformed into Wendigos or were on the verge of doing so. As it turned out, Jack Fiddler was a medicine man considered to have great powers. This is how he got away with executing so many people, and why members of his community pled for his and his brother Joseph's release after their arrest. Jack ended up taking his own life before he could even stand trial. His brother Joseph was sentenced to death as his accomplice. He was granted a pardon, however, it didn't come in until 3 days after his execution. No matter how much it consumes, its hunger is never sated. A Wendigo grows directly in proportion to the person it just consumed, making it impossible for it to ever be full. It is the embodiment of gluttony, constantly consuming yet never satisfied, always on the brink of dire hunger.